And now, another exciting episode in the adventures of Outdoor Journal Radio.
Well, howdy, folks. Thank you for joining us once again. I'm Angelo Viola. He is Peter Bowman.
Hi.
Peter G. Bowman.
Peter G. Bowman. Now, the G stands for?
Gord.
Oh, very good.
Well, what else would it stand for?
Remember Fred Sanford? Freddie G. Stanford. And the G stands for gorgeous. He'd have all kinds of different G's for him.
Welcome to the show.
Love that show, by the way. Remember Sanford and Son? Oh, my God. Was that a good show?
Was there anything better on television? Oh, my God.
He was so good.
Red
Fox.
Today? Would that even fly today, you think?
Yeah, I think so.
You think?
Yeah.
Because well, not really, because that would, think about what they were. They were the opposite of Archie.
Right.
Right? That whole
Archie Bunker,
Sanford and Archie were
they crossed over somehow too. I think wasn't there characters that crossed over into
might have been,
maybe.
but they were totally opposite in their viewpoints about other folks. If you will.
I just like Fred's opinion on Aunt Esther.
Oh,
he had so much. Anybody go back and look for Sanford and Son? Look at the Fred Sanford Aunt Esther fights and battles. Oh my God, they were so good.
Great program today. We're gonna have a little fish talk happening here a little later on.
Yeah, it's about
in the
time,
program.
Give me a hell yeah! Hell yeah.
Our good friend Dr. Stephen Cooke will be joining us. For those of you who don't know. Dr. Stephen Cooke, well, let me tell you, there's a lot to find out about him. Mm-hmm. He is a biology professor at Carleton University, but he's been working in so many projects. Probably the only guy I know that has 700 documented works that are peer-reviewed papers.
That is correct. That's a correct number.
That's 700.
At least.
Insane. Anyways, he's good at what he does, and he loves fish. He loves talking fish, but he also fishes. And
that's a nice bonus, isn't it?
Yeah, real nice bonus.
Yeah.
He will be joining us a little later on. Not sure what part of the world he'd be in, but I know he was in China recently, so we'll find out when.
He's a traveler.
He sure is. Before we get to all that, how about the
Fishing
store?
Canada store, shop.fishingcanada.com. We got all the regular stuff, but we got those new hoodies come in. Those guys right there.
Hot.
Yeah.
Those are hot.
We have a walleye, we have a muskie, and we have a largemouth bass. Walleye, so, and they all look fantastic. Look at that.
Those
kind of a new look for
hot.
us. Yeah. We've delved away. It was very hard to pull this guy away from our logo. We had to get the hook on him and pull it like that.
We still have the logo. You can buy a hoodie with just our
but
logo.
This one doesn't have the
main
logo.
This was a redesigning.
That's what I'm saying. It took you a lot to the arm wrestling. It took two of us to put your arm down.
This was the Ian Mucher version of the Fishing Canada logo.
Meaning?
Because that's what they do. They reinterpret.
I thought he made that for us. Is he getting a cut on that? Because he'd like to.
They reinterpret things there.
Yes.
Right? So
good move.
We're reinterpreting the Fishing Canada
I like
logo.
it. I like the look of it.
Anyways,
I think it's cool.
It's hot.
With a little bit of scientific name underneath there, too. You know what I mean? Like, just to add a little bit of intelligence to our name.
All of the new T-shirts, the summer wears coming in as well as we speak. So
show off your guns, boys. Right?
That
Come
too.
on now.
There you go.
That too. I don't know where you're going.
Good.
All right, let's move on to listener feedback. How about that?
Yes, this comes from Thomas Nugent via email.
Is that is that T Nugent or Tom?
Teddy Nugent, Teddy G Nugent. The G stands for greatest guitar player of all time. That's what he'd tell you. He's not, but he's good. I used to be an avid Ted Nugent fan. I saw him in Maple Leaf Gardens years ago, and he came in with his loincloth on his leopard skin loincloth all the way out on the shorts and his guitar, and he's coming swinging on a vine like Tarzan across the stage, playing the guitar.
Only Teddy, eh?
Oh yeah, great entertainer. I'll tell you that. Yeah. Quite the hunter too, eh?
Big time.
He loves his hunting. So.
And I was going to call him an activist, but that would be not. He's a good representation for the hunting community.
Absolutely.
And the conservation community.
Absolutely. I heard an interesting one. He said he got so many deer on his property that when he shoots a deer now, when he harvests a deer, he just keeps the back straps, the beautiful, and then he gives the rest of that to his family or to other people and stuff like that. So
Okay. Cool.
Good man. Anyways, this is from Thomas Nugent, probably Ted's brother, maybe sibling or some type or something going on. I love your podcast. However,
Oh, wait a minute.
However,
I knew there was a catch.
they have been getting a little long in the tooth up until last couple, I think, that anything over an hour is too long for my short attention span.
All right.
Thanks for some very useful information. So he likes us in small doses, maybe.
The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. That's what I learned growing up.
Okay, so what are we going to do for Thomas? Are we going to make him...
you can do a couple of things. We could edit special versions for Thomas. We can cut.
There you go,
Can we do that,
Thomas.
Dean?
Oh,
is that possible?
That would be Vova, I think.
Volva's
That's
good?
Volva's.
Okay, so maybe we could do special versions for Thomas.
we should probably clear it with the Countess because she will have a certain price tag on that.
Well,
right?
no, I was thinking.
No. We got
what
it.
I was thinking is that maybe Thomas wouldn't mind because he'd be getting the extra attention of a specially edited version of the podcast.
Yes.
He wouldn't mind like coughing up a couple of bucks for that type of thing.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
A fee.
Countess got nothing to do with it.
Oh no.
Countess ain't
here's
paying for
this under
shit.
the table. This is
the Countess ain't paying for shit.
So
Trust
this
me.
is under the
This would
table.
never fly with her. This would be something just between us and Thomas.
Us and Thomas, or you and Thomas? When it comes down to the dollars, the cash
Yeah,
dollars.
because you don't like doing the heavy lifting, right?
Well,
you're all about the I'm the nice guy.
I'll take the
know
cash
that.
if you want.
Okay.
It's getting it out of your pocket. That's the tough part.
Oh,
That's the tough job.
Yeah.
You know.
So no, yes, no.
Thomas, we apologize. Sometimes we just have fun. We're up here. We're just kind of shooting the breeze. It's very unscripted. We got a script, and good Dean Taylor does a great job of that. But if it's long, it's probably because we're just farting around and having some fun.
Maybe we get paid by the minute.
Or the word,
Speaking of
the
pay,
word, yeah, the
speaking
minute and
of
the
pay.
word, yes.
If he's on Spotify, though, you can speed us up. You can turn us up to like 1.5 or something, and it'll probably be done in an hour.
And it'd be no problem understanding all
It'll
the words.
you guys will be high pitched and quick, but
I pitched Eric.
yeah, but you can do that.
Wow. Hey,
He's not the only one, by
Is
the
there
way.
an easy way on Apple Podcast, Dean or Nick or anybody, to fast forward, to scrub through? It's so hard. I find it so hard to scrub through. They have the line there, and I got to kind of roll my thumb to move it a little bit, like it's small increments. Is that?
So if you, I don't know if this is good podcast material, but if you put your thumb on it and then you move it to the bottom of the screen and then move, it moves in small increments.
I thank you, Dean.
Yeah.
Thank you,
There you
sir.
go.
There you go. Because
See,
sometimes you
learn
just,
something, You just don't want to listen to
I don't listen to me. I listen to you. When I go listen to us, I
sometimes
move
you're
over to
like-
Ange. There's Ange again.
Sometimes you're like Thomas. You just don't
Oh,
want
are you kidding me?
You want to commit that language.
That fast forward button is part of my life right there, and everything I watch.
You're not the only one, Thomas. We do agree. There is sort of sometimes they get carried away. The programs get carried away a little bit because like you said, we enjoy doing what we do. But more importantly, sometimes a guest is really intriguing or goes on a little bit. So
They get carried away, much like this listener feedback piece is getting carried away. Thomas is getting lots of time right now.
You
isn't
think
he?
he's getting too much time?
Hey,
See,
Thomas
there
is
you
smart.
go.
That was
there you
smart.
go. There you go. See,
Thomas.
there's a problem right there.
There,
So this will
Thomas.
probably go into overtime. And why?
And everybody's going to say, Thomas Nugent made those guys talk too long. That's what's going to happen. Thomas, you're in trouble now. Oh, boy.
fishingcanada.com. I hope that helped, Thomas. If not, well,
At least you got a good shout out, Thomas.
Exactly.
At least, right? You know what I mean?
fishingcanada.com. Was that what we were? No, we're
Podcast Network,
Podcast
which you can
Network.
access on fishingcanada.com for sure.
That's why I said that.
That's right.
That's
right?
what I'm
It's
thinking.
That's the easiest place to find out all our network.
You're right. I don't go to now that I think of it, when I want to find out something about what we're doing, I go to fishingcanada.com, even if it's about a podcast.
There you go. There's multiple ways of doing this,
See?
right? Multiple
And I go through the
avenues.
front door, by the way.
Right?
I don't
Well,
take
for
any
the
shortcuts.
podcast, if you went to shop.fishingcanada.com, I don't know if you get the podcast, would you? That might not be the back door might not get you there.
True. Good point.
Don't go in the back door of an outhouse, buddy, because
I
you'll
was
be in trouble if you do that.
I was going somewhere with this.
I'm not sure.
Episode 46 of Eaten Wild.
Wow, they're getting up there. Hey, look at that.
They sure are. Eaten Wild. It's called What Makes a Chef, with Antonio's, or maybe Antonio's not with him, but the chef is Craig Baxter, who, by the way, I just watched an offline edit of him. He's the Irish guy.
Scottish, actually. They talk about that on the
Scottish
show.
Irish.
He
What the hell's
gets
that?
no, he hates that.
Green,
They hate that.
He's green.
Portuguese,
But
Italian,
they're
same
other-
thing,
no,
right?
No, but those two.
Yeah.
No, wait a
No,
minute.
you didn't.
He's got a green tattoo.
Yeah.
He wears a green shirt. Why would I not think he's Irish?
He's married an Irish woman, maybe.
And he talks with
being nice
one
to
of
her.
those accents. He sounds like
One
an
of
Irishman.
those accents.
He sounds
They
like
have
an
very
Irishman.
different accents. They do have different accents.
I can't pick them. I can't. Well, maybe if I heard them side by side, I would.
Yeah.
But if you just
You could, I think.
hear one,
Really, eh?
Well, my first notion was that he's Irish, but Scottish. Anyways, he does a great job of food preparation.
He's a good wee Scotsman.
He's answering all kinds of questions on the Eating Wild podcast. He's done a lot of work in Australia, so he's cooking kangaroo. How good is a brew burger?
They're damn good.
Oh,
They're damn good. And they're a nuisance down there. You know what I mean?
I know.
So that's
I
an
know.
animal that you take care of business, and you get to eat them too. You don't just throw it away.
he talks about Scottish poachers. See, there you go. Now we know he's Scottish.
Yep.
Yeah, because he wouldn't talk about Irish poachers. 'cause
No.
Now you get in
would-
trouble for that.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
get beat up. They get beat up for that one.
Hey, now you're profiling. Stop
The best beer for cooking. He talks about that, which is an interesting subject.
I'd like
in
to hear
itself.
about that one.
I know you would.
That'd
That's
be-
why you got to go to episode 46.
Oh, I listen to them all. Trust me. I'll be
I
waiting
know.
for that one.
And
interesting.
When you can start calling yourself a chef, which is very, very interesting.
Wow.
So there you go.
Have you ever called yourself a chef?
Sometimes I do.
Yeah?
Yeah, because I have certain dishes where I would defy a real chef to make any better.
I'm gonna. Once I read this, then I'm gonna give you a little, or listen to this. If you haven't listened to it yet, I'll give you a little quiz of what he says, and then we'll
Please.
see if you're
Please.
chef material or non-chef
See if
material.
I'm chef material.
Okay, chefy. Chefy.
Peter McVeigh, Chefy
Chefy.
Peter McVeigh. Speaking of chefs, I had this wonderful experience.
Here we're
But
gonna
I
go
can't
on a
share
bit here.
I can't share with you because Thomas would object to it. But I
You got
guarantee
to.
you're losing out on a world-class story. But I'm not going to go there.
We'll
All I
do
can
that
say-
as a special episode, maybe on a Q&A. I'll write
Peter-
in a question. Dear
Peter
Ange, who is
McVeigh.
Peter McVeigh?
Oh,
Or something
my
like that.
God. He was, I don't even know, he's probably not alive anymore, but oh my God, what a character.
Scottish? English?
He was English,
He was English.
hardcore, like staunch.
McVeigh.
Staunch.
Yeah.
Wow, needless to say, he makes a split cane
Bamboo?
bamboo rods.
Right.
He splits the bamboo in little slivers.
Wow.
Like hundreds of slivers, but they're not just split, but he has to shape them with and I can't remember, 32 degree or 35 degree angles on both sides, because when you put them together, they have to form a circle, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. And he would
Wow.
do it after a jug or two of wine. That was the amazing part.
And he did a good job?
Anyways, I'm not going to get into the story because it's just going to make this whole show too long, and I don't want
Much
to do
too
that
long.
for
Much
folks
for
like Thomas.
Thomas, yes.
All right?
Yes, indeed.
Thomas Nugent via email. By the way, if you
Nugent.
want to have your stories read or thought or your statement on here, you just-
Feedback of any type?
any feedback at all, you just check us out at info. Is it info?
Info@fishingcanada.com.
Is that where Thomas sent his?
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yep.
All right, info.com, and Dean will pull it out and make sure that we address it.
Dean looks at him. He
on
knew
now.
this was significant enough that we're carrying on. So Dean wants the audience to get their opinion in on Ange and Pete yapping too much versus not versus yeah, good. We don't mind bad negative.
What's in the news, Mr. Bowman?
This is a good news story.
Yeah.
In the senior U.S. In the senior U.S. Open Amateur, isn't it championship? Was it Dean?
Yep.
Yeah. This dude caught that northern pike on a golf course body of water. Now, I guess it'd be a golf pond. I guess they're all ponds,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now, he states that it was a 50-inch
No.
fish.
Well,
His best
no.
guess was
He'd have
close-
to be huge.
He'd have to be like Eric Lindros right
Yeah.
there. You know what I mean?
He
Or
could be
the
6
Hitman.
foot. He could be
6'2", 6'4", 6'6". Yeah. I mean, he's like, but
It's
look
a
at
big
that.
fish. It's a big fish.
That is a big fish to be caught on a pond.
Well,
on a
yeah.
golf course.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
Let alone on a
normally, like we have Royal Ashburn up north of us here. they had largemouth bass and rainbow trout in their ponds, right?
They're probably huge too, I bet.
The rainbows were big.
They get real big.
Oh my God, they fed them every night, and then they throw the pellets in, and then
I think every golf course has probably got a hole or two with fish in it. Why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? And I think some of them come naturally too somehow.
Birds.
Birds like that's what I mean. Yeah, instead of stalking, like, as you know.
Which behooves me. How in the hell? I mean, I don't get it.
Maybe poop. What about bird poop? Could they eat a bass and then poop it out and it was still alive?
Maybe? If we remember, which we probably won't, we should ask Dr. Cooke later on.
Oh, God.
Right?
Now,
Mark it down.
I'm not writing that
But
down.
it just behooves me how they can say that a bird is capable of carrying fertilized eggs. Yeah, you know what? Long-legged water birds that are walking
storks,
along,
whatever.
Because they're walking and they step on a nest and eggs get stuck in their feet. Then they fly off to the next
They're already
pond.
fertilized, so now they somehow get through and survive.
I suppose.
Wasn't that the case when we were in Florida? Wasn't that what they said? Those strip pits that we were on. It's insane the amount of largemouth bass in these places. They said it was all natural.
Yeah,
that was crazy. Remember that? We were catching 2 at a time on a top water.
That was good fishing.
Was that good fishing?
Wow.
Another notable golf course catch in 2010, a sturgeon was caught at Riverbend Golf Course in Alberta. So a sturgeon must be a river that runs through that camp. Well, it could be a pond or a lake on there too, right?
Sturgeon living
4 foot
in a
8, 77 pounds. So,
wow.
And peacock bass in Florida. There's some largemouth, of course, but peacocks.
Yeah, a lot of peacocks there now.
Wow. That's a good pike for. I'd take that pike anywhere.
Never mind on a golf course.
I don't know if it's 50 or not, but I'll tell you what, it's a big one.
It'd be 50 if you were holding it.
Big boy, 80. Come on. Come on now. and the guy can golf too, and I can't.
And that news, by the way, is all sitting at fishingcanada.com. If you're looking for a place to get information like that, like where else are you going to get stories like this? Fishingcanada.com, the portal, the gateway to your next fishing adventure. Right?
Give me a hell yeah!
Hell yes.
Hell yeah.
Fan question of the week.
Jody Charlton from BC via email again, info@fishingcanada.com. See that? They're all emailing us,
Now, how
folks.
do you know if these are fan questions of the week or whether they are...
Because a question would be a question and a feedback would be feedback. Like Buddy's
It's all about the
Ted Nugent
punctuation.
there. Ted Nugent gave us the, hey, you're too long in the tooth there, bud. This guy, Jody is saying, quote, what is the weirdest thing you have found in a fish's stomach? So that's a question. That is an actual
hell kind
question.
of a question is that?
Well,
you couldn't have dug a little deeper in that 45-gallon drum?
I have no choice. It's all random, right? I spin it up and
True. I like that.
comes
Nate.
out.
So
Yeah,
that-
but
so
when
that-
you get one like this, can't you just... Nobody,
No,
is
no,
anybody...
that's
is
like
anybody
the Fishing Canada draws. You
is
can't
there
do
a
that.
security
You can't
guy
do that.
there from Brinks watching you do this draw?
it's an honor system.
Volva is doing it. Volva
It's all
watch him
honor.
over. It's all honor system. Dean and Volva. I have not
Wow.
that I can remember. I can't remember any weird things. I've seen Senkos in fish's bellies.
Yes.
The actual Yamamoto Senko
Plastics,
because that bait is so. There's something about that bait to fish, especially largemouth bass. They love it so much that they will literally swallow it and eat it if you let them. You know what I mean? So you got to be quick on the draw with that.
I can't think of
I
any.
had-
I mean, other than other animals, I've all kinds of other creatures.
Duck. You had a duck.
A duck.
Spit out in a
remember
net
that?
from a smallmouth bass.
Yeah,
He's a little baby duckling.
That was great.
I caught one time. This one freaked me out, but it's natural, but it freaked me out as to why. I caught 2 northern pike that were side by side, basically in the size of this room, within less than an hour of each other. Brought them home because I was going to eat them. One was full of shad, beautiful shad, shiny shad, like probably gizzard shad, whatever we have around here, and nothing else. And the other one, this exact same size pike, had all baby bluegill in his belly from the same body of water, same time of year, obviously.
Same area?
Same area, right there. Like, this is like side. They were like a schooling, but they had totally different stuff in their bellies. I don't know why that would be, and I mean totally, and about the same amount. So they had about 5 or 6 of these small fish in their bellies, but just a totally different. One was on the shad bite, and one I guess didn't care about it, and one was on the bluegill bite and didn't care about the shad.
Well, I mean, it's like humans, right? One wants to go to McDonald's, the other one's, I don't know, Burger King.
Yeah.
Good buddies.
Hamburger
They hang
versus
out. They
chicken
hang
burger.
out together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
That's what it
But
is.
I wonder if that one just predates the one is a shad killer. He just loves doing the more open water, whereas the bluegill guy was sort of in the weeds or whatever like that. Because there's weeds right in the area, but there's open water right in the area too. So, that was kind of cool.
There you go, Jody. That's I haven't got anything better.
No.
That's good, actually.
That's good compared to what we were hoping for, right? So there you go.
The humble goldfish, everyone's favorite aquatic pet. It's small, easy to care for. What's there not to love?
Even the cat may be mesmerized by the color and movements of your aquarium friends. Goldfish are great at home, but don't let them loose.
Releasing goldfish or other domestic aquatic pets or plants into natural environments is harmful to both your pet and the planet.
Goldfish disrupt ecosystems by outcompeting native species for food and resources in degraded habitats. They contribute to algae blooms, they kill aquatic wildlife, and pass viruses and diseases contracted in aquariums to wild fish.
They could even live up to 40 years and grow as big as a football. Anglers, this is where you come in. If you find a goldfish at your local fishing spot, report it to the Invading Species Hotline or go online to eddmaps.com.
Remember to never dump your live bait into the water and risk spreading other aquatic invaders. Keep our lakes free from invaders and don't let them loose.
What brings people together more than fishing and hunting?
How about food?
I'm Chef Antonio Maleka, and I have spent years catering to the stars. Now, on Outdoor Journal Radio's Eatin' Wild podcast, Louise, Hookset, and I are bringing our expertise
and Rolodex to our real passion, the outdoors.
Each week, we're bringing you inside the boat, tree stand, or duck blind and giving you real advice that you can use to make the most out of your fish and game.
You're going to flip that duck breast over once you get a nice hard sear on that breast. You don't want to sear the actual meat.
And it's not just us chatting here. If you can name a celebrity, we've probably worked with them. And I think you might be surprised who likes to hunt and fish.
When Kit Harington asks me to prepare him sashimi with his bass, I couldn't say no.
So whatever Taylor Sheridan wanted, I made sure I had it.
Burgers, steak, anything off the barbecue. That's a true cowboy.
All Jeremy Renner wanted to have was lemon ginger shots all day.
Find Eating Wild now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you get your podcasts.
Alrighty, let's jump into a little fish talk with the doc. Our guest, as I mentioned at the top of the show, he's not a guest anymore. He's a regular. He's a
regular
host,
there you go.
co-host. Dr. Stephen Cooke, fresh back from a long trip around the other side of the globe. How are you, Steve?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Good. Just back from China?
Yeah. China's fascinating. Similar issues with respect to aquatic resources that we face here. Lots of big rivers and lots of big dams. But what's really remarkable is they have entire universities that are, the entire topic of the university is fish and water resources. So you know how normally like there might be a department at best at a Canadian or US school? We're talking about an entire university with 20,000 plus students studying nothing but aquatic resources, which is just mind-blowing.
Wow.
You wouldn't think of, I wouldn't associate China with really being involved in conservation and fisheries and all that stuff, but wow.
I'll tell you, you see a lot of videos though where they're very fish-oriented. If there's a fishing video of any type, be it netting or catching to eat, whatever, place is loaded with fish species. Yeah. Like I don't know what species they are, but they just load the boat up. It's unreal the amount of fish they have. Do they have invasive species there?
From North America.
Do they? Yeah.
They have North American invasive
They have
species.
northern pike over there.
Yeah. We trade. We'll take we get the carp and we send them sunfish.
Yeah, there you go.
No kidding.
There you go. Okay, they do. Right. And
So-
you're in Quebec right now too, correct?
Yep, Quebec City, overlooking the Plains of Abraham. I can see the St. Lawrence River out my hotel room at a conference, the International Fish Passage Conference, where we're talking about getting fish safely past dams, both upstream and downstream.
Cool. Interesting.
You're always on the move. Like, holy mackerel.
Never home, but
I
he's
thought
like
we
us,
were
huh?
back.
Yeah. Well, he gets the summer at home. He just goes all through the spring and fall and winter, right? So
Yeah.
there you go. Cool.
Alrighty. What do we got on tap for today?
Well,
How about our favorite topic? And we seem to be talking about this all the time, but it really isn't that often. But it seems to me that we're pre-spawn and nesting bass. In this case, behavior. What are you guys working on? I believe you're either finished or you're just starting a study on that. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, we've been working on bass for a couple decades, and this is the Royal We. It's a big team, and it includes my PhD advisor, Dr. David Phillip from the University of Illinois, and he's retired now, but we continue to collaborate on this work. And indeed, I saw my first bass on a nest last Friday, and I get home from Quebec tomorrow, and first thing Thursday morning, I'll have a wetsuit on, and we'll be getting up close and personal with these animals. So we do have bass already on nests here in Eastern Ontario, a little bit earlier than usual. Yeah. We spoke a month or so ago and definitely had some concern about things being shifted really early, but in the end, I would say about a week earlier than usual to spawn here.
Right. I was out on the weekend, Stephen and Ange, and I was into a couple of largemouth back bays, and there was remnants of some nests either from last year. I couldn't tell if they were last year's nests or maybe they started to make them this year, but there was zero fish on nests, like none. They were all swimming around, cruising and looking for their partners or whatever they're doing, eating. I'm not sure, yeah. but they were not yet.
Sunfish, right? Yeah, sunfish like to sun themselves, and bass are sunfish, and they do just that. At this time of year, bass, like in the system that you were in, they're up in that shallow water. It's dark bottom, so it warms up nice and quickly, and they're just sitting there taken in the sun. They love it.
Yeah,
so and what's going to trigger them? What is going to be that defining moment in each one of their lives that says, I got to go and I got to get my thing done?
Yeah. A temperature that increases to about 14 or 15 degrees and stays at that level or above. So, for example, if it were to go to 15 degrees in the back bay today and then down to 12 tomorrow, they would, even if they spawned when it's 15, they would abandon their nest. It would be too cold. The cold would kill their eggs and developing offspring. So it needs to be at least 14 and stable, ideally going up from there. So, and it really is about temperature. And it was that bay that I found that my first and only nesting bass I've seen this year, last Friday, that was about 14 and a half degrees Celsius. And those, we'd been in there the day before and it wasn't 14. It's just like that. It's a magic temperature.
That's it. And I'll tell you what, at this time of year, for anybody that's listening, one thing I have noticed on every area that I fish, this is zone 20 that I fish, so be it Lake Ontario, be it the Bay of Quinte, somewhere, these adjoining body of waters. They're very different too. The Lake Ontario is very different than the Bay of Quinte. But every morning, those water temps are way lower, like in Fahrenheit, at least 3 to 5 degrees lower than they are in the afternoon. So they're fluctuating. These nights are getting so cold, I guess the water temperature is dropping back down, and it's really affecting these fish. They are not moving into the spawn yet. The other day, that water was up to 62 Fahrenheit. So I'm not sure what that is, what your number is. I can't even remember in Celsius anymore, but it went up to 62 and it stayed there. But then I know it was going to drop. They said it's going to be a 10-degree night again. It's going to drop down again. So these fish are exactly what Steve was saying. They're just getting out, they're coming back in, they're moving around, they're just not ready yet. That temperature is not there yet. So
yeah, it doesn't make sense to invest they've waited an awful long time. They've waited since last year at best. Some of them have not spawned for a few years, and last thing you want to do is ditch your eggs and fertilize them and start to guard them, only to have them wiped out that night from cold temperatures. So they do wait till it's good and stable. There's still some nests that will be lost if there's a big storm event, a week or so into the spawn that blows cold water up onto the nesting areas. That will wipe out the bass spawn as well. Some of those fish will re-nest, others won't.
I mean, it's still a concern, obviously, with the changing weather that we're having. It's still very much a concern because, as we've talked a million times, at least here in Canada, and I say that because I want to talk about the U.S. and how their fish differ down there. It's still here. It's a bit problematic if the weather doesn't cooperate and the season doesn't cooperate. The opening season doesn't cooperate. It could be a real cluster and do a lot of damage. And it's funny. It's not damage that we're going to see today, is it, Steve? It's damage we're going to see 4 or 5 years down the road. So
you got it. Exactly.
I'm assuming that's what you guys are going to be doing on this study is just seeing how much, what the effects are on fish that are bedding early and or late, depending on the season.
Yeah. So here's the deal. In parts of Ontario, we have regulations that restrict people from actively targeting largemouth bass and smallmouth bass during the reproductive period. So, for example, I live in Eastern Ontario, and in the inland lakes, think about the Rideau system and so on, those water bodies, to actively target nesting bass is illegal, period. The problem is it's almost unenforceable because, the only way to really get a charge is if the conservation officer comes along and says, hey, what are you fishing for? And you say, I'm fishing for bass.
Spawning bass.
They look on your cell phone and or see you posting pictures of bass that you've caught out of season and aren't getting them back into the water as quickly as possible. So the problem is that you can, once different seasons are open, you can go out today and fish for crappie or bluegill or yellow perch, totally legal, in the same habitats where you would find nesting bass in many cases. You can come up in a couple of weeks and fish for northern pike and fish in the same areas using similar baits to what you would catch bass on. So, a conservation officer can't come along and say, oh, you're throwing a 6-inch Texas rigged worm, that is only for bass. Well, guess what? I've caught pike on those too. And it's not my first go-to lure, that's for sure, for pike. But that's never going to hold up in a court of law. That the angler was using a bait that was so specific to bass relative to the other things that could be out there. So like I said, we've got a functionally unenforceable regulation. So fast forward and COVID hits, okay? We've been monitoring bass populations for the last 20 so years throughout the Rideau and in Charleston Lake as well, up in the Mississippi system. And we were starting to see through time an increase in the number of hook wounds. So when we go snorkeling, we come up to a bass that's on its nest and we can see on its face whether or not it has bruising. And we intentionally at times angled nesting bass, and we can go back the next day and be like, yep, there's a bruise in that area where that hook was located. And so we count hook wounds, and then we also look and see how many of those bass were successful come the end of parental care. How many stuck around, guarded their babies till the babies were independent and had a fighting chance at making it throughout the rest of the season. And so pre-COVID, we were seeing those hook wounding rates creep up somewhere around 70, 80% in a lot of the lakes where we were monitoring. And we were seeing reproductive success rates of around 15 to 20%. So even though, let's just use simple numbers. So if there's 100 bass nests in the lake, only 15 to 20 of those are actually producing baby bass. Wow. So that had us worried. We were already starting to think, wow, this is problematic. And then COVID happened, and there was a natural experiment. And that natural experiment was, especially during that first year, the early part of 2020, boat ramps were closed. Our American friends were not crossing the border. And we do have a lot of folks that come up, a lot of tourists that come up to fish early season panfish and pike. They weren't there. And what did we see? 5% hook wounding rates and nest success rates that were 3 to 4 times higher. So we're talking 60, awesome. 70, even 80% success rates. And then we went back the following year and we counted the 1-plussers to see how many of those fish that from that first year had made it. And we counted the highest numbers we'd ever seen. So it wasn't just that more bass were making it through that parental care period. We were getting more baby bass the next year, which is recruitment. And that means more bass for all of us to catch in the coming years. So that's what led us to this experiment. And I'll describe the experiment that we're doing now after you guys reflect on that.
Wow, that makes sense, and it's awesome.
From my standpoint, how I reflect on that is that we need to get a little more serious about our rules and regulations because, yeah, you're right. There is no way to tell whether I'm in there invading, nesting bass or fishing for crappie or fishing for bluegill or fishing for anything. And I can make an argument on any of those species, whether I'm fishing for them or not. So that definitely is not working. And we need to move on thinking that it is an effective way of policing this. So the only effective way, because, see, the other problem too is that this changes year to year. That's that period where the fish should be totally untouchable, can fluctuate from year to year depending on weather. So we've got to come up with a new way because it doesn't make sense to me. And I think most real ardent bass anglers will agree that they're willing to shorten their season if the fishery is going to be strong and burgeoning and flourishing for years to come. I don't think there's a bass angler that would argue with that. So we got to come up with something that works. You said you went out fishing this weekend for bass.
Yeah.
I have total confidence in not, if you see a nesting bass, even now, which I'm sure there are some, as Stephen alluded to, I'm sure you would pull away and back off.
Exactly.
But that's
Might drop a GoPro in and get a picture like Steven does, maybe.
Right.
But
it's you. But it's the other 99%
absolutely.
that I don't trust.
Absolutely.
So how do you stop that? Well, you got to put regulations in place to say you will not fish until we are completely satisfied that spawn is done. Is that maybe middle of July, as ridiculous as this may
Well, it's
sound?
in July now on Zone 20, right?
In Zone 20.
For smallmouth.
So, we've just got to do a better job. We can't be afraid of the backlash from anglers screaming and yelling. I know there's a bunch of people right now listening to this saying, hey, you're an anti-fisherman and you hate us. No, not at all. I just want to make sure we have fish.
And it goes for post-spawn as well, or not post-spawn, opening day on a late season. Those fish could still very well be on beds, even with this new season that Steven's going to tell us about. Those big males could still be, a 5-6 pounder on a bed. And you have to have the willpower to say, you know what, I'm going to leave that guy alone. I'm going to go catch some fish over here somewhere or whatever. Because we have to be our own conservation officers. I wish we could be it to others and say, hey, and educate somebody, but it's a tough thing to do out there, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So here's what we think a potential solution is, and that is putting in sanctuaries that protect nesting bass. But I'm not talking about, hey, let's shut down the whole shoreline on the lake. In fact, we think that we can, with topo maps and charts, figure out where the best bass spawning habitat is. It's not hard to do. We've snorkeled enough of these lakes to know where good bass habitat is. And then take a portion of that water and actually say, no fishing at all. You can't go in there and fish for pike. You can't go in there and fish for bluegill. But the rest of the lake is wide open. You could even have a season where you could have a catch and release bass season, because it's functionally what we have already. It's not legal, but for the rest of the lake. Now, what we've done is lobbied the provincial government to put in a 2-year experimental regulation to test whether or not these bass sanctuaries work. And so we've done that on Lake Opinicon and Charleston Lake. It was in the news last year. People had the opportunity to comment. It's just for 2 years, and it's a very small part of the lake. On each lake, it's less than 10% of the surface area. And we've chosen some areas that are pretty sweet for bass reproduction. And then we've got other areas outside that are equally good that we'll be monitoring. So we're going to compare the reproductive success inside the sanctuary and outside and see how this works. To be clear, that idea of that trade-off where you can legally fish bass outside the sanctuary, that is not in effect yet, but that's the kind of creative thing we could talk about in the future. So this is just a 2-year experiment to see how things work. And so we've got a team of about 10 students, as well as Dave and I and some other helpers that are donning wetsuits on a daily basis, monitoring nests within and without. We're also putting telemetry tags in fish to track their movements, to see how long the fish are protected while in that sanctuary area. And so the season, it closed April 15th, and it'll open on the first Saturday in July. And so, like I said, you can't go in there and, and dip a worm for bluegill. You can't troll through for lake trout. It is full-on fish sanctuary, but only for that 2.5 month period.
How do you mark that area? How does the public know this is a sanctuary?
So it is in the regulations book, and it's the obligation of every angler in Ontario to make sure that they're adhering to the rules. On top of that, we have put up 75 signs that delineate the boundaries. Some of those signs have maps on them so that people can see specifically where they are. We've developed some storyboard materials so that people go to and I can provide the website to your team to share, that people can learn more about the details. And we've put maps up also at the key boat ramps on both the Pinnacon and Charleston, and working with the local lake associations, bass tournament organizers, and so on. So I think we've done a pretty good job of getting the word out. Not surprisingly, the conservation officers that patrol those lakes are putting a little bit of extra effort into them this season as well.
Yeah, perfect.
We actually had a program like that in BC when I was out there, and they use, like the thing they use on beaches to divide like the swimming area.
Yeah,
that's what they put around there, and people would just be on the outside like dropping jigs right on the edge of it. Yeah,
of course they would.
Yeah.
We interrupt this program to bring you the much anticipated bonus code for the latest Fish in Canada giveaways. This week's code is FISHERY. That's FISHERY, all capital letters, FISHERY. Just type that in the bonus code section of the contest and receive 100 free entries towards all our current giveaways. For those who haven't entered yet, what the heck are you waiting for? Head on over to fishingcanada.com while you listen to the rest of this episode. Click contests and sign up for all the latest Fish in Canada giveaways. And now, back to the show. Stephen, one of the problems I think that we have, and maybe this is a good time just to really define this. A lot of folks say, yeah, but you know what? We're so anal about this because in the U.S. and I go to Florida every winter, and that's all we do is fish for bedding bass down there. It's an actual thing. They promote it. Tournaments, big national tournaments in the U.S. They fish on bedding fish. So why is it that I have to adhere to these crazy rules that Stephen and his team want to put up? They fishing in the U.S.
I hate Stephen Cooke. I hate Stephen Cooke.
Why is that?
Your name on the list, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so two big things. So number one, the warmer things are, the more productive systems are. And so when you go to a place like Florida, those fish are actually able to squeeze out a couple spawns a year if they want. It is more productive. There's more time to grow, more time to get chubby. Getting chubby allows you to put resources towards egg development, or if you're a male, to put in the energy needed to guard your babies. So it's just a function of more time to grow and not a winter to penalize you. A winter in Florida, you still have the feed bags on, just not as much as in the summer. Whereas up here in the winter, we do have. We'll talk about this another time. We just had a student that just defended his PhD the other day, and we now know that bass definitely do eat in the winter, but it's still a relatively little, under the ice, they're just doing the basics, just basic maintenance. So that's a big part of it. The other piece of the equation is stocking. So there's not a single provincial fish hatchery in Ontario that produces largemouth bass or smallmouth bass. Whereas if we go into the middle to the southern U.S., there's a massive hatchery system to support those fisheries. And whenever we have a hatchery system, so again, here we have natural reproduction that provides us with our bountiful bass populations, albeit with more fishing pressure and more nesting bass. We're not allowing them to do what they need to do. But in the U.S., it tells us that something's off, that there's too much fishing pressure if you need to stock. Stocking is an absolute legitimate fisheries management activity and decision, but we do it when the other tools aren't working. It's a last resort. Here, we're able to manage bass populations theoretically by limiting fishing during the reproductive period. We have limits on the number of fish that can be harvested. We have the season closed in the winter when they're aggregated and all kind of hanging out in the same spots. And if things go poorly here, we don't have a hatchery truck to back up to the lake and dump more in. So I think that also behooves us to do a better job in protecting the natural reproducing fisheries that we have. And it's cheaper. Mother Nature is doing it for us. We're not having to pay to produce fish.
That's
to
true.
put in these lakes.
No, but Stephen, though, if you look at it at another angle, could it not be for an economic value for them? Just let's get as good a bass population as possible down in these lower states, and we're going to get more anglers out there and more anglers out there. Could they be doing it for that reason?
But they're stocking them, right?
That's what I mean. If they just keep stocking, even if they're depleted naturally, they just say, let's keep this going, put more gas in the tank. You know what I mean?
Exactly. It is an economic argument. It's the economic engine. You need fish to draw folks in,
right.
And if the management interventions aren't sufficiently aggressive, or if the effort is simply too high, and we're so lucky in Ontario. There's so many choices. We can't figure out where we want to go to fish. Whereas in a lot of these, I know we have Toronto and Ottawa and Montreal. There's some big cities around, but we don't have the same pressure that some of those systems in the southern U.S. face. We have more water and fewer people, and we benefit from that. But we also need to protect that.
I just read, and it wasn't about bass, but I just read a piece out of Quebec, actually. I think it was, it's speckled trout or brook trout fishing, where they have still in that province lakes where catch and release fishing is not even allowed. And I only mentioned that because my next question to you was how effective is our catch and release working on bass in this part of the world? Because in Quebec, apparently, there's some question whether it's working or not. And in fact, there's lakes where you are not allowed to catch and release. You've got a limit of fish. You know what that limit is. Catch them and get out of here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Eh?
Yeah. During the non-reproductive period, bass are quite resilient to catch and release. So things go badly for bass in two scenarios. One is deep hooking. And so that tends to happen. You can even, it can happen to it can happen to either of you as fisheries fishing professionals on occasion, rare occasion. But it happens very commonly with novice anglers that don't realize that their dew worm is, halfway being digested before they notice that they've got a fish on. Yeah. The other is, of course, barotrauma. So fish that are caught from depth. And we've talked about barotrauma before. And of course, if there was ever anything that happened, a catastrophic live well failure, you're not paying attention to your live well, you're fishing a tournament, and all of a sudden there's no oxygen left in your live well. Those are sort of the three scenarios in which bass tend to kill bass. In general, if you go fishing, even during relatively warm temperatures, largemouth bass and smallmouth bass are pretty resilient to catch and release. Grab a quick picture, get them back in the water. They do quite well.
So let's say the water is 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Is one species overall tougher on catch and release than the other? Is a largemouth more resilient? Is a smallmouth more, or are they dead even?
Largemouth bass are much more resilient in two ways. One, they can do better. They have a higher thermal tolerance. And two, they can tolerate lower levels of dissolved oxygen. And so that was some work, actually, I did in collaboration with Dr. Bruce Tufts, who's somebody that you've had on before. Back about 20 years ago, we looked at the comparative physiology of smallmouth bass and largemouth bass to figure out why smallmouth bass tended to fare relatively relatively poorly in a comparative sense in live wells compared to largemouth. And we usually would see that when people would fish for both in the same day.
Right.
So, for example, somebody's down in Simcoe, they fish smallmouth in the morning in cool, deep water, throw them in the live well, and then head down and fish the Holland River. And, the water temperatures, 10, 15 degrees Fahrenheit warmer, right. And a little bit more turbid. And guess what? Those smallmouth aren't doing so well. So
right.
If you did the opposite, it wouldn't be a big deal.
Yep.
Largemouth would do just fine in that slightly cooler, clear water, but those higher temperatures can kick a smallmouth in the butt.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's funny, because if you thought about just like an average angler that's caught a few of each species, they think, oh my God, that smallmouth's got to be way tougher than that largemouth. The largemouth can flop, and then that smallmouth is up and down and all around.
The smallies are tough, but not when it comes to water.
Exactly.
But they are tough. We've seen it.
Oh my God, they're fighters. That's cool. That's cool.
And they're so much more aggressive. So we're dealing with the largemouth nests. So we're dealing with the largemouth first, and they are much tougher. So in terms of if we need to catch them for experimental purposes, or even to find their nests, you swim up and you're like, that kind of looks like a nest, but the male isn't here. And the reality is we've scared them away for a couple seconds. We see them kind of lurking off in the corner. Whereas a smallmouth bass will be in our face. Yeah. They will bite us. They will, every year somebody gets their mask knocked off.
That's awesome.
If we do need to experimentally angle fish, smallmouth, it's usually the first cast. They are very aggressive. They're very good dads. Yep. So that's an interesting observation too. Just the toughness of of smallmouth. We see it on the nest. They're really, really good dads.
I think that transcends throughout the year, because so many times Ange and I have been in the shallows, and you're working on a largemouth, and you're just sitting there like an ass. Just it won't bite. You're shaking and doing it. He comes over, he looks at it, backs up, takes up. You do that to a smallmouth even in the summertime in the shallow water. So I think that's like that all year almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Stephen, we know you got to go. We don't want to take a whole lot more time, but I just want you to give folks that are listening to this or watching this that might not be as familiar with the life cycle of a bass. Give them just a quick overview of what happens once those eggs are laid and the father is guarding the eggs. What happens from there forward?
Okay, so just remind everybody, it's all about the male. So the male creates the nest. The female comes around, chooses which male's going to get her eggs. She and the male spawn for about 2 or 3 hours. He'll sort of shoo her away when he's happy with the amount of eggs that he's fertilized. And then he sticks around. He does the hard work. The female disappears. She goes to start eating, thinking about spawning next year. And the male sticks around 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He is on high alert. He is, for the first week or so, he is constantly spinning on the nest. And he's doing that to oxygenate the eggs, to keep them free of silt. It also allows him to look in all directions. He's paranoid that a bluegill or a little perch is going to rush in there and steal his babies. If it's a predator-rich lake where there's gobies or lots of sunfish, he'll be chasing them away. He'll be opening his mouth and making aggressive displays. We call it yawning, but it's not because he's tired. It's because he's trying to look ominous. And over time, as those babies develop, as the eggs hatch and they start pinging up off the nest, they start to wander a little bit further from the nest. The dad will go with them, and the dad will continue to now provide care as this mobile ball of fry moves around in shallow bays along shorelines, and he'll do that for anywhere between 3 and 6 weeks. 3 weeks if water temperatures are warm, 6 weeks if water temperatures are cool, and if at any point the male disappears, the male is removed, or he gets tired. He runs out of fuel. Basically, he runs out of energy. he will bail, and those offspring will be consumed unless they've developed anti-predator behaviors. But that's really when the male leaves. In best case scenario, the male says, wow, you guys know what you're doing. You guys are able to fend for yourselves now. I'm gone. Good luck. And that's the 3 to 6 week mark. But if he leaves early, they are fish food. They will be slurped up by other fish in a matter of minutes.
Can you say with total certainty that when that fish is caught, either inadvertently or purposely caught during this period that you just talked about, do you know for a fact if that fish will go back to doing what he was doing before he was caught, or is it over for him?
If they're released close by, in other words, if they went in a live well, which would be in our part of the world illegal, right. But if they were released right away, they will go back. Okay. They will assess their nest. They will look at it and say, wow, this nest is full of bluegill. Half my babies are gone. This ain't worth it. And they will bail. Obviously, if you get the fish back quickly, and we do this, for example, when I say we experimentally angle fish off nests, we put in a surrogate dad. So one of the students is in there in a full wetsuit, 7mm wetsuit with a pointed rod, and they are defending the nest. And it is hard work. There might be 20, 30 awesome. Sunfish trying to get in there, and we're aggressively protecting the nest until that male comes back and gets control. So as long as the nest hasn't been devalued, in other words, lots of his babies or eggs eaten, then he will get back to it, but he will be tired. Right? He just exercised. You caught him, there might've been a little bit of air exposure. That makes him a bit tired. So it takes about 12 hours before he starts to guard with the same vigor before you angled him. So even though might be back on the nest, and even if none of his babies got eaten, he's going to be a little bit slower for that first 12 hours or so. So he's not out of the woods until that point. So, it depends is kind of the answer.
Yeah, all the more reason why we need to do something about that. I really believe we need to look at that and say, okay, let's not fool around here, folks. Because
it's critical.
It's critical.
Absolutely.
Anyways, you got to get going because they're waiting for you on stage there. So
keynote speak somewhere else now. He's probably talking about cars somewhere or something.
Stephen, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time, man, and keep up the good work, buddy.
Yes, sir.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Take care.
All right, Stephen.
Take care. Oh, Dr. Cooke, Stephen Cooke.
He's good,
man. You want a little fish talk? There's a little fish talk.
That's a lot of fish talk right there. You know, when guys that have been in the industry as long as you and I have and are totally on the edge of our seats listening and taking it all in, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So
it's a problem that we've been talking about. It seems like forever. Ever since we started catching bass, we've been talking about what happens if. And it's still
one of the things that freaked me out, and he's absolutely right, is that I've seen guys. I saw so much on the Cottage Lake, on Crystal Lake. Guys in the no, there was no predators in there. They were fishing bass. But you see these guys that are throwing spinner baits in a bass/pike area, and they're doing pre-spawn. But he said when you're throwing a plastic worm, how many pike have you caught? You probably got on your one hand, you could tell on a plastic worm. Hardly any. Yeah.
None.
Yeah. So that guy's bass fishing, yet they can't prove it in a court of law. That's crazy. It's scary, that one. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, I know. It's a weird thing because every time I pull the soapbox out and stand on it and scream out that we need to do better at guarding and managing pre-spawn fish, everybody thinks I'm anti-fishing, and it's not the case. I'm just stating the facts that if we keep mucking around with these fish when they're in their reproductive cycle. So somebody said, and I don't remember, it was a good friend of ours, said, well, what's the difference between mucking around with them when they're just at that pre-spawn stage as maybe in the fall when they're starting their egg production?
Right.
At some point, right? And he made a good point. He says, you're damaging them then. You might as well damage them when they're ready to drop them, But it's not the case.
Do you honestly think you're damaging a bass in the fall with the eggs, the female eggs?
The point was exactly that.
Yeah.
Is that's when they're starting to develop.
The fish have eggs in their bodies a lot longer than people think.
Yeah.
They don't just go, it's almost like a human, right? I don't know how many months they have it.
Catch a big female late in the year, you might potentially be damaging.
She's probably got eggs in her. I'll bet you in October, November.
So where do you draw the line? I mean, that's the case. We're fishing idiots. We love to fish, and consequently, we will always push that line.
I like the sanctuary thought too. I like that.
I love it.
I think that's a great idea. It's worked in past for walleye, etc. on these river mouths. 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later.
Although to Dean's point, he's right. Because we've seen it.
No, push the edge.
Everybody's going to fish right on that
that's
rope.
Okay.
Now they know where the bass are, right? Exactly. Because they're like, well, they're in there. So
exactly, you're pointing it out to us. Saying, hey, bass are here.
That's what I thought when Stephen was talking about that. I said, I gotta get my eyes on those charts too, because I know everyone. As soon as that season opens, I'm in there.
Anyways, it's a fascinating subject and one that we need to continue dialogue on because it needs to be. We need to keep working until we think we have it right. Maybe we'll never have it right.
We probably won't, but you know what? I think if we keep stepping towards that, you know what? We might save a few fish. So
that are it. On that note, we will bid you an adieu on the Outdoor Journal Radio podcast. From all of the crew here, Bova behind there, he was actually very involved in.
Well, he likes the bass stuff. Bova's a bass guy.
He only nodded off. He only nodded off 3 times.
Oh wow! Largemouth or smallmouth, Bova? What's your preference? Second, little smallmouth. He's a smallie guy.
Nicky
he likes the jumps.
V is actually in the house.
Wow. And he sat with us for the whole time, too.
Almost. No, he went out.
Did he go for a little poo-poo or something?
Yeah,
Done?
Why do you have to be so vulgar?
I could have said shit.
And, of course, our illustrious producer, Dean Taylor. Mr. Bowman, Angelo Viola. Talk to you later, folks.